Well, that was a pleasant drive from Vlora over Logra Pass and then down the coast. And we've now arrived at Porto Palermo, which is in the south of Albania on the Ionian coast. It's protected by two large headlands and high hills behind it. In ancient times, this bay was known as Panormus, but was given its new name, Porto Palermo, during the Byzantine era. Down here is the submarine base, which after 20 years I'll be going into, so I'm very excited about that. We've got permission by the military to go in there and film today, so we'll be doing that, and then after that we'll be looking at Ali Pashës castle, which is situated in the middle of the bay. Well, the good news is we made it onto the military base. We got through the front gates and the guards with our paperwork, of course. But the sad news is today they've decided to close the tunnel and they're not allowing us to go into film. These things happen with military. You never know what activities they've got going on, etc. So what can you do? But the good news is we're on the base. We're right next to the tunnel. And I'll just give a bit of a backstory here. So in 1944, at the end of the Second World War, the communists took power in Albania under the command of Enver Hoxha, who became a ruthless dictator. This government was formed under the protection of the Yugoslavs and also the Soviet Union. But this relationship was very short with both of them. They broke off ties with the Yugoslavs a few years later because Enver Hoxha was very concerned that Albania would be annexed by the Yugoslavs. So he cut off ties with them in 1948. And then with Khrushchev in the Soviet Union becoming a bit more of a revisionist, taking a softer line with communism, so that they could live within a mixed global community, Enver Hoxha thought that he was becoming too soft and a revisionist, walking away from the strong Marxist-Leninist communism that he had adopted. So he began cutting off ties with the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union finally invaded Czechoslovakia in 1968, that was it for Enver Hoxha. He then broke off all ties and left the Warsaw Pact. Then, luckily for him, he was thrown a lifeline by the People's Republic of China, who didn't have a mouthpiece at the United Nations. The representative of the Chinese at the United Nations was the Taiwanese government. The People's Republic of China, the Communist Chinese, didn't have any representation, so by paying Enver Hoxha, throwing him the financial lifeline, he was able to become their mouthpiece. And this lasted fine for a few years until Hoxha then also suspected of the Chinese of becoming revisionists, as they welcomed Nixon in 1971 to visit China. And then in 1977, the Chinese extended an invitation to General Tito of Yugoslavia to visit. And for Enver Hoxha, that was a step too far. So he decided to cut off ties with the Chinese as well and go it alone. He tried to make Albania an independent state that was self-sufficient, but as we know, that became a disaster. So Enver Hoxha was completely paranoid of imperialist invasion, of other communists invading. So he then went on a spree, starting in the 1970s, of building bunkers all across this land, about 175,000. And this bunker for submarines is the only one of its kind in Albania. It's very unusual. Sadly, we're not going in, but we can definitely film around it and have a look around the area. Let's go. So this bunker is 750 meters long. Massive feat of engineering that goes completely under this headland and opens up with another gate onto the Ionian Sea. So submarines or fast craft could come in this side of the bay, be serviced, refueled, had new ammunition put on them, and then let out straight into the sea on the other side. Very effective, but never really used, because in 1955, when Albania joined the Warsaw Pact, the Soviet Union stationed 12 whiskey-class submarines here, with the intention of being able to control and check NATO within the Mediterranean. This worked fine for a few years, until Enver Hoxha became concerned about Khrushchev becoming a revisionist and forced the Soviets to leave Albania. With them, they took 8 of the whiskey-class submarines, so he was only left with 4, making it difficult to find parts for the submarines. And with his crumbling infrastructure, these craft pretty much became useless. There's one still stationed in Vlora at Palermo naval base. It's decaying. The other 3 have long been scrapped. But this base was used for a short time with the submarines, and they'd come in this side and leave the other side. Enver Hoxha was also very concerned about the proximity of NATO to his maritime border. As we have Corfu just a few miles away, there was an incident immediately after the Second World War with the British Navy when they fired on the British Navy for being too close to their border, and also they then mined the channel there and blew up 2 British ships, and many sailors died because of that. So this proximity to NATO forces also would have determined this base to be built here, especially for fast craft and for submarines. Good deterrence for keeping NATO away from him. The setting for this base is just spectacular. It's sitting right on the edge of this bay, beautiful clear water. I mean, if you were in the military, this would be a great place to be stationed. And it still is a working military base. There's a lot of naval people walking around. We've been given the correct paperwork to be here, so don't try and come onto this facility just through the fence. And there are a lot of armed guards here. So these large doors were obviously intended to stop any form of attack. They're big iron doors on the base on both sides, and inside the tunnel there were also workshops for maintaining the submarines and craft. There were barracks, and it had many hundreds of men stationed here during the Cold War. As you can see, there's still some fast military craft stationed here today. But the water's just spectacular. Obviously a deep channel to allow submarines to come in. And I've seen some spectacular looking blue fish swimming around in here. Obviously they don't need the paperwork. But that's it. It's a huge structure and a massive feat of engineering to go 650 meters through this rock. And they are big concrete doors. Some of the artillery bunkers that you find around Albania have massive concrete doors on them, blast doors, but these absolutely huge. It's like a mix between a dystopian past and Lord of the Rings. So sitting in the middle of Porto Palermo Bay is a small island connected by a stretch of very thin land. I'd call it an island, maybe it's a peninsula. But on this island is a castle called Porto Palermo Castle, sometimes referred to as Ali Pashës Castle. Ali Pasha didn't build this castle. This castle was most likely built by the Venetians, as it has a very similar design to the Venetian castle slightly south of here in Butrint, which was built in 1500. We know that this castle in 1662 was of great concern to the Venetians. They were worried that the Ottomans who were invading would take command of this castle and launch an attack on Corfu, just 2-3 miles away across the channel. So there was a castle here in 1662 before Ali Pasha. Ali Pasha was a despot that controlled all of this area in southern Albania in the early 19th century. One of the stories attached to this, when he renovated, he didn't build it, he most likely renovated this castle. And one of the stories attached to it is that 2 French engineers helped him renovate it, and on completion he had them both killed, probably to protect any secrets about it. But this story's probably a myth, and it's told more to tell about Ali Pasha's ruthlessness than it is about trying to keep secrets of this castle. It's 300 lek to get in now. It was free for many, many years, but with the increase of tourism and helping with the maintenance of the castle, there's a small entrance fee. But it's well worth coming here and having a visit and having a look around and exploring Ali Pasha's castle. Well, this is quite a transformation. I haven't been inside this castle for 20 years, and back then there was no entrance fee. You just walked in. It wasn't tidy like this and cleaned. You couldn't see the flagstone floors, which just beautifully worn after centuries of use. The middle of the castle is one open area with various antechambers coming off it. This castle was also given to the British to use in the early 1800s. Ali Pasha, who was in control of this castle, gave it to them during the Napoleonic Wars. William Leake, who was a British diplomat and military attaché to Ali Pasha and other rulers in this area, inspected this castle in 1806. And the only thing protecting it were 10 soldiers and 2 4-pound guns. So Ali Pasha did not place very much strategic importance on this installation. Hence, he gave it to the British to use in the Napoleonic Wars. It was never really used that much. And then after Ali Pasha's death, it basically turned into ruin. So one of the myths and stories about this castle is that Ali Pasha built it for a much younger wife that he had, called Vasilici. She was probably in her early 20s or 20 when she married him, and he would have been well into his 70s. But he loved and adored her very much. So although he probably didn't make this castle for her, he renovated it, the story goes to show just how devoted he was to his younger wife. In fact, he was so devoted to her that, being a Greek Orthodox religion, she was allowed to practice her religion in the court, which he had at Tepelena, and also build a very small chapel, which actually held masses. This was very unusual, being a strong Muslim area under Ali Pasha, and him being most likely Bektashi, which is a Sufi, Muslim Sufi order. So he was very devoted to her, and that is why the myth that he built this castle for her exists. The topography really shows why this castle wasn't built by Ali Pasha Tepelena. In the early 19th century, artillery was quite strong and powerful. And to build a castle here would be very dangerous, as the hills behind the castle are very high. Someone could easily place artillery there and take this castle out. So it was obviously built by a maritime people that could service the castle from the sea. Hence why it was most likely originally Venetian, and Ali Pasha merely renovated it. It's such a beautiful castle in such a wonderful setting, and so good to see it so tidy and cleaned up since I was last here over 20 years ago. But as wonderful as it is, this was also used as a prison by the Italians during the Second World War, and then by the very harsh communist regime between the years of 1949 and 1950. Many political prisoners, men, women, and also children that came from wrong families, were interned here. The conditions were very bad. There was mold, the roof continually leaked, people were going blind from the black mold, their health was bad, and they had to close this castle down. So, whilst walking around, give a moment or two to those people who suffered and were cruelly tortured during that period of history. Well, here we are in the middle of Ali Pasha's castle, and this is Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex.
Alex. Unyam Roberti. Sianimir?
Unyam Alex.
And Alex is a staff member here, looks after the castle. Ali Pasha, Kalaya Ali Pashës.
Ali Pashës.
And Alex is a singer in polyphonic singing, which is renowned through this area of Albania. And he has a wonderful tune that is about Ali Pasha that he would like to sing.
Po, pa tjetër, me kënaqësi. Ali Pasha more, eu Pasha të shtrena, koka në Stamboll more, e trupin janina, të vran Ali Pasha more, eu Pasha të shtrena, koka në Stamboll more, e trupin janina.